Well, hello there, and welcome to A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. I've talked previously about sports movies and my relationship to sports movies. To summarise, it's just simply the fact that being someone who is not particularly sporty myself, or at least growing up not particularly sporty, there is always that hesitance that sport films are made for people who love that particular sport. Of course, as I've gotten older and developed a deeper understanding of film, it became apparent that sports films are not really about the sport. Maybe on some level, but ultimately it is, like all filmmaking, about the human condition. And in the case of Rocky, the relationship between the story of a boxer and a story of a man just trying to do better, yes, they're intertwined, but ultimately, the boxing is simply an aspect of the character of Rocky. Now, unfortunately, this is a curse that one applies at least twice to Sylvester Stallone's career, where I think the great heartbreak of Sylvester Stallone is the fact, and when I say heartbreak, I mean maybe artistically, because he's a multi-millionaire with huge accolades and a career spanning 4 decades. So I don't think he goes home to cry into his money. But artistically speaking, I think the great tragedy of Sylvester Stallone is that there are definitely periods of his career where he saw himself as an artist. Obviously we think of him as an actor and we think of him as an action movie actor. But of course, Sylvester Stallone wrote Rocky. He wrote the script for it. And if you look at the choices that he's made throughout his career, he is definitely someone who didn't want to be seen as just the big tough guy. The way things have panned out, it unfortunately does fall back into that on several occasions. But you can see periods of his career where he's tried to move away from just action films and, done strange comedies, for instance, like Stop or My Mother Will Shoot, or that one he did with Dolly Parton. So you get the sense of someone who wants to develop some sense of versatility and someone with a creative passion. And if you take, say, Rambo, and I have a very difficult relationship with the Rambo franchise, because I think the first Rambo film, First Blood, is a beautiful depiction of a tragedy of a Vietnam vet who doesn't have a place in the world that he's fought for. And of course, based on the novel, where, and this is spoilers for Rambo, it's the spoilers for First Blood and the novel, Rambo is originally supposed to die. It's only, unfortunately, because of test audiences and because of sort of studio pressure that Stallone agreed to change the ending. Of course, then we've gone on to have endless Rambo films where it completely undermines the sort of deeper, more complex message about what we do with war vets and the consequences of war and the toll that it takes on individual men, and ends up becoming just a series of bloodbaths. And Rocky, to some degree, has that same journey, where, as I say, the first Rocky film is not a sports film. It's not. It is a really beautiful story about someone who simply... Well, it's not even about... you could say it's about someone trying to get out of the slums of his life and overcome loneliness and find love and find, some sense of meaning. But it's even simpler than that. It is just simply a slice of life about a guy who, is reaching 30, is thinking that his profession, the career in the field that he loved, is coming to an end. He's not going to be a success in it, but he still has a passion for that industry, and he's just trying to live his life, and it is purely through serendipity that an opportunity finally presents itself to him, and he doesn't even fully know what to do with it. And of course, in Rocky, that's boxing, but ultimately, it's the story of Sylvester Stallone. It is, that he was an actor who, of course, was reaching into his 30s, hadn't been particularly successful, and didn't really know where his career was going. And of course, you tie both things together with sort of the Italian stallion, which is what Rocky is referred to throughout the film, but of course is a moniker given to Stallone during the small stint he had in the adult film industry. And so this is really biographical, or at least derived from his experience about, sort of the everydays, the sense of feeling like a loser. You have the sense that Rocky feels that terrible isolation and the sense that he is a bum and a loser, and people have no expectations of him. And then, of course, you've got Adrian, who, again, is her isolation, the sense of someone who has become so used to being timid and cutting herself off that she doesn't really know how to relate to people, to the point where, unfortunately, like so many people who are simply quiet, she is bad. The use of derogatory developmental disabled language is used against her. And of course, you've got Paulie, who is, again, a guy who just genuinely wants to be cut a break. Someone who is your standard working class guy who just desperately just wants the break. And they all symbolize people whose lives are just rattling away, but they just want that break. Because this is the beauty of the story, that, there was no reason for Rocky to get the opportunity. It is simply at the whim of Adonis Creed. That Adonis Creed, who of course is a allegory for sort of Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. Someone who is a huge phenomenon and a showman, and this heavyweight champion, and because of circumstances, he needs to find someone, and he chooses Rocky just purely because he liked the moniker the Italian Stallion, and that was it. It was simply serendipity that the fight comes together. And of course, Rocky wants to make it mean something. He doesn't want to win, and of course, the great beauty of Rocky is that he doesn't want to win. He just wants to be a contender, which of course means he just wants a sense of respect, a sense of acknowledgement that he isn't a failure, a loser in life. And so when you get to the climax of the film, he doesn't even care whether he's won or lost, because he's gone the distance, and that's all he wanted to do. And all he cares about is Adrian and the fact that he loves her. And it is a beautiful love story. This is definitely one of those films that I've heard time and time again that people have said, Rocky is a love story more than it is a sports story. And it's more than that, because it is a character piece. It is just about, you have these... Stallone, like I say, is a creative, and you have these quiet moments of contemplation where he sat with his tortoises, or where he's walking the streets, and there's just so much pain and anguish because there is that sense of aimlessness and tragedy to it, but it is not a tragedy because it is about overcoming that tragedy and finding those joys. The fact that he pursues Adrian and eventually wins her over, for him is a massive joy, and he's a rich and complex character. And like I say with First Blood, you have that fear that, of course, when we get into the later Rockies, it becomes a question of whether he loses that, and whether Rocky, the original film, should have just been a standalone, like First Blood should have just been a standalone. And of course, there's a question of, would that have benefited his career or would it have hurt it? Who's to say? But I think the nice thing about the Rocky franchise is it definitely has had its peaks and troughs. And I am someone who actually quite likes Rocky 4. And there are points where it is just a sports movie. in some of the sequels. It just becomes a sports movie. There are times when it goes into strange directions. There are times where it's trying to be more and say more and loses itself a little bit. And of course there came a point where it came to a natural end. But then, of course, we've had Creed. And to sort of circle back from where I started with this video, Creed is without doubt my favourite sports film. Creed is such a powerful character piece for exactly the same reason Rocky is, that it is... Yes, it's about boxing insofar as boxing is an aspect of this character, but it is more than that. It is about this person and finding meaning and relationships and definition and meaning to their life. And I still think Creed is phenomenal. And though I don't I think Creed 2 is not as good as the first one. I think the absence of Ryan Coogler as a director demonstrates that the direction of the films were going more into sports movies than like in the same way as a Rocky. I do think Creed 3, which is being directed by Michael B. Jordan, as well as starring, I do hope that completes a trilogy, and again comes back round to the fact that this is a film about humanity and purpose and the modern era and where people find their place. And I think it all charts back to Rocky. And say what I will about, like I say, the things about Stallone's career and the unfortunate fact that he is constantly bracketed into action hero, I do think there are just moments of brilliance and nuance where he is desperately trying to just play a man, and he does it really well. There are moments in Rocky, there are moments in Creed, there are moments in some of the other. I mean, there are First Blood where his performance genuinely shows someone who is putting layer and meaning underneath just a performance that could be seen as quite superficial. So yeah, all the way back from Rocky, great film. Great film that cannot be taken away from it. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button, comment below and share the video, because this all helps me in the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to get notifications of when new videos are uploaded. Check out my back catalogue of over 250 videos. And follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I tweet about TV shows and films, and I share these videos once they're uploaded to YouTube, either the day of or the day after. Thank you for joining me. Take care.